Once upon a time, in the land of Canaan, there lived a man named Jacob. Jacob had 12 sons, but his favorite was Joseph, the son of his beloved wife Rachel. Joseph was a young man of 17, and his father loved him more than any of his other sons. To show his special affection, Jacob gave Joseph a beautiful coat of many colors. Joseph's brothers were very jealous of him because of their father's favoritism. Their jealousy grew even more when Joseph shared his dreams with them. One day, Joseph told his brothers,
"Listen to this dream I had. We were binding sheaves of grain out in the field when suddenly, my sheaf rose and stood upright, while your sheaves gathered around mine and bowed down to it."
His brothers made fun of him.
Do you intend to reign over us? Will you actually rule us?
Their hatred for Joseph intensified, but Joseph had another dream and told it to his brothers.
I had another dream, and this time the sun and moon and 11 stars were bowing down to me.
When he told his father as well, Jacob rebuked him.
What is this dream you had? Will your mother and I and your brothers actually come and bow down to the ground before you?
But Jacob kept the matter in mind. One day, Jacob sent Joseph to check on his brothers who were grazing their flocks near Shechem. When Joseph's brothers saw him approaching, they plotted to kill him.
"Look, the dreamer is coming."
They said, "Let's kill him and say a wild animal ate him." Reuben said, "Don't kill him. Just throw him in the pit." They stripped Joseph of his coat and threw him in the pit. Seeing a caravan, Judah suggested selling Joseph. They sold him to the Ishmaelites for 20 shekels of silver. In Egypt, Joseph was sold to Potiphar, an official of Pharaoh. The Lord was with Joseph, making him successful in all he did. Seeing this, Potiphar made Joseph his attendant, putting him in charge of his entire household. However, Potiphar's wife tried to seduce Joseph repeatedly, but he refused, saying, "How could I do such a wicked thing and sin against God?" One day, she grabbed his cloak, but he ran away, leaving it behind. She then falsely accused him of trying to rape her. When Potiphar heard this, he was furious and had Joseph thrown into prison. Despite being imprisoned, the Lord was still with Joseph. Even in prison, Joseph's integrity and faith never wavered. He found favor with the prison keeper and was put in charge of the other prisoners. God's favor remained with Joseph, and he was given the gift of interpreting dreams. This gift would later lead to his rise to power in Egypt. Some time later, the cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt offended their master, the king of Egypt. Pharaoh was angry with his two officials and put them in custody in the house of the captain of the guard, in the same prison where Joseph was confined. The captain of the guard assigned them to Joseph, and he attended to them. After they had been in custody for some time, each of the two men, the cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt, had a dream the same night, and each dream had a meaning of its own. When Joseph came to them the next morning, he saw that they were dejected. So he asked Pharaoh's officials who were in custody with him in his master's house, "Why do you look so sad today?" "We both had dreams," they answered, "but there is no one to interpret them." Then Joseph said to them, "Do not interpretations belong to God? Tell me your dreams." So the chief cupbearer told Joseph his dream. He said to him, "In my dream, I saw a vine in front of me, and on the vine were 3 branches. As soon as it budded, it blossomed, and its clusters ripened into grapes. Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes, squeezed them into Pharaoh's cup, and put the cup in his hand. This is what it means." Joseph said to him, "The 3 branches are 3 days." Within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up your head and restore you to your position, and you will put Pharaoh's cup in his hand, just as you used to do when you were his cupbearer. But when all goes well with you, remember me and show me kindness. Mention me to Pharaoh and get me out of this prison. I was forcibly carried off from the land of the Hebrews, and even here I have done nothing to deserve being put in a dungeon." When the chief baker saw that Joseph had given a favorable interpretation, he said to Joseph, "I too had a dream. On my head were 3 baskets of bread. In the top basket were all kinds of baked goods for Pharaoh, but the birds were eating them out of the basket on my head." "This is what it means," Joseph said. "The 3 baskets are 3 days. Within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift off your head and impale your body on a pole, and the birds will eat away your flesh." Now, the 3rd day was Pharaoh's birthday, and he gave a feast for all his officials. He lifted up the heads of the chief cupbearer and the chief baker in the presence of his officials. He restored the chief cupbearer to his position, so that he once again put the cup into Pharaoh's hand, but he impaled the chief baker, just as Joseph had said to them in his interpretation. The chief cupbearer, however, did not remember Joseph. He forgot him. After 2 years, Pharaoh had a dream. He was standing by the Nile when out of the river there came up 7 cows, sleek and fat, and they grazed among the reeds. After them, 7 other cows, ugly and gaunt, came up out of the Nile and stood beside those on the riverbank. And the cows that were ugly and gaunt ate up the 7 sleek, fat cows. Then Pharaoh woke up. He fell asleep again and had a second dream. 7 heads of grain, healthy and good, were growing on a single stalk. After them, 7 other heads of grain sprouted thin and scorched by the east wind. The thin heads of grain swallowed up the 7 healthy, full heads. Then Pharaoh woke up. It had been a dream. In the morning, his mind was troubled, so he sent for all the magicians and wise men of Egypt. Pharaoh told them his dreams, but no one could interpret them for him. Then the chief cupbearer said to Pharaoh, "Today I am reminded of my shortcomings. Pharaoh was once angry with his servants, and he imprisoned me and the chief baker in the house of the captain of the guard. Each of us had a dream the same night, and each dream had a meaning of its own. Now a young Hebrew was there with us, a servant of the captain of the guard. We told him our dreams, and he interpreted them for us, giving each man the interpretation of his dream. And things turned out exactly as he interpreted them to us. I was restored to my position, and the other man was impaled. So Pharaoh sent for Joseph, and he was quickly brought from the dungeon. When he had shaved and changed his clothes, he came before Pharaoh. Pharaoh said to Joseph, "I had a dream, and no one can interpret it. But I have heard it said of you that when you hear a dream, you can interpret it. I cannot do it." Joseph replied to Pharaoh, "But God will give Pharaoh the answer he desires." Pharaoh narrated the dream to Joseph.
The dreams of Pharaoh are one and the same. God has revealed to Pharaoh what he is about to do. The 7 good cows are 7 years, and the 7 good heads of grain are 7 years. It is one and the same dream. The 7 lean, ugly cows that came up afterward are 7 years, and so are the 7 worthless heads of grain scorched by the east wind. They are 7 years of famine. It is just as I said to Pharaoh. God has shown Pharaoh what he is about to do. 7 years of great abundance are coming throughout the land of Egypt, but 7 years of famine will follow them. Then all the abundance in Egypt will be forgotten, and the famine will ravage the land. The abundance in the land will not be remembered, because the famine that follows it will be so severe. The reason the dream was given to Pharaoh in 2 forms is that the matter has been firmly decided by God, and God will do it soon. And now let Pharaoh look for a discerning and wise man and put him in charge of the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh appoint commissioners over the land to take a fifth of the harvest of Egypt during the 7 years of abundance. They should collect all the food of these good years that are coming and store up the grain under the authority of Pharaoh to be kept in the cities for food. This food should be held in reserve for the country, to be used during the 7 years of famine that will come upon Egypt, so that the country may not be ruined by the famine.
The plan seemed good to Pharaoh and to all his officials. So Pharaoh asked them, "Can we find anyone like this man, one in whom is the Spirit of God?" Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Since God has made all this known to you, there is no one so discerning and wise as you. You shall be in charge of my palace, and all my people are to submit to your orders. Only with respect to the throne will I be greater than you." So Pharaoh said to Joseph, "I hereby put you in charge of the whole land of Egypt." Then Pharaoh took his signet ring from his finger and put it on Joseph's finger. He dressed him in robes of fine linen and put a gold chain around his neck. He had him ride in a chariot as his second in command, and people shouted before him, "Make way." Thus he put him in charge of the whole land of Egypt. Joseph wisely prepared Egypt for the coming famine. As a reward for his loyalty and service, Pharaoh also gave Joseph a wife, Asenath, the daughter of Potiphar, priest of On. Joseph married Asenath, and they had 2 sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. Joseph named his first son Manasseh, saying, "God has made me forget all my hardship and all my father's house." His second son he named Ephraim, saying, "God has made me fruitful in the land of my affliction." Joseph's faithfulness and integrity were rewarded not only with power and wealth, but also with a loving family. His story exemplifies the blessings that come from living a life of righteousness and fleeing from sin.